A very interesting comment. So this person says, oh, okay, why Taiwan is ruled by a pro-American government, and if it called China, now why isn't it a part of China, and why they arming themselves with Western weapons for defense against a possible invasion? This is your favorite half Chinese. This is a mistake, a very common mistake that many people often make. And the mistake is you assume that your assumptions are correct without verifying the facts and doing your own research. After I told you it is incorrect, you should have been researching it to prove me wrong. Instead of assuming that all your assumptions are correct, you should be wondering, why does MrFong doesn't agree with me? So let us see what Jimmy Carter had to say himself.
Good evening. I would like to read a joint communique which is being simultaneously issued in Peking at this very moment by the leaders of the People's Republic of China. The United States recognizes the government of the People's Republic of China as a sole legal government of China. The government of the United States of America acknowledges the Chinese position that there is but one China, and Taiwan is part of China.
Well, there you go. They acknowledge that Taiwan is a part of China. There's no doubt about it that the United States acknowledges it. So you should start to wonder, why is it that the United States in the media and as a government often makes it look like Taiwan is independent and as if they are supporting independence, while officially they are not. What is going on, and why are they lying not only to their own people but also to the world, or at least are trying to portray a different story in order to create a certain sentiment among the people? And that is a real question that you should be asking. But we are not finished here, so stay with me. I will show you the rest. So this is from a very recent article. An old friend, former US President Jimmy Carter, remembered in China for establishing diplomatic ties. This is from Sunday, December 29th. Unfortunately for the family and for Jimmy Carter himself, he passed away. So here it says, during the heat of the Cold War, the Carter administration held months of secret negotiations with Chinese officials to normalize relations, which had been estranged since the Chinese Communist Party took power in 1949. Now, I want you to know something about what they are saying, because what they are saying is not 100% correct, because it was not only the Chinese Communist Party that took power in 1949. They won the revolution with the people of China, because it was actually the people fighting against the state, the Republic of China. So it's not that they took the power, they won the revolution. And then it continues, for decades, Washington had recognized the Republic of China in Taipei as the sole legal government of China. Now that is very interesting to understand. The Republic of China, they regarded them as the legal government of China, of whole of China, including the mainland, right? After the Kuomintang was defeated by the communists in the Civil War and fled from the Chinese mainland to the island of Taiwan. Now here it also states that they have fled to the island of Taiwan, which also back then was also a part of China. A represent with the People's Republic of China began during the presidency of Richard Nixon, who made an ice-breaking visit to Beijing in 1972, but it was Carter who oversaw Washington's formal switch of diplomatic recognition of Taipei to Beijing. See, there was the shift. Republic of China officially was out of the picture, and the People's Republic of China was in the picture. At least that was the case for the United States, because earlier they were already recognized by the United Nations according to Resolution 2758. On December 15, 1978, Carter announced that at the start of 1979, the U.S. would end its diplomatic relations with the Republic of China in Taipei and recognize the People's Republic of China in Beijing as the sole legal government of China. And that, my friend, includes Taiwan, as we have just researched, right? So let's see if the government of Taiwan also agrees with it. We can see here, this is from the government of Taiwan, since it says taiwan.gov.tw, which is official government site. Its history is written here, right? That is what they write themselves, not the People's Republic of China. It's very important to know. In 1943, during World War II, Republic of China leader Chiang Kai-shek meets with US President Franklin Roosevelt and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill in Cairo. After the conclusion of the conference, the Cairo Declaration is released, stating that Formosa, Taiwan, and the Pescadores, the Penghu Islands, shall be restored to the Republic of China. Now, why do they say that? Because at that time, the Republic of China was ruling over whole of China. That is the mainland, including Taiwan and those other little islands. In 1945, the Republic of China, UK, and US jointly issued the Potsdam Declaration, called for Japan's unconditional surrender and the carrying out of the Cairo Declaration. After World War II, Republic of China government representative accept the surrender of Japanese forces in Taiwan. So that's very important to understand, because it shows that before that it was already from China, and then the Japanese actually occupied it, actually colonized it, and they gave it back to China, right? It's very important to understand the whole history combined. So what we have learned from this history is that before the Japanese occupation, Taiwan was a part of China, and after the Japanese occupation, it was returned to China. So there's no way, shape, or form that we can say that Taiwan is an independent country, because it never was. It has always been a part of China. The difference is only in who was ruling China at that time. At that time, it was the Republic of China, and now it is the People's Republic of China. Since the mandate, so to say, has been given to the People's Republic of China, Taiwan is a part of the People's Republic of China. And that is how it is. Now you also understand that this all has to do with a civil war, which is actually still ongoing. The only difference is they are not fighting militarily against each other, but the civil war is very much ongoing. It also shows one thing, that China is really sincere with a peaceful solution for reunification. Otherwise, they would have been attacking it militarily. And that's just a fact. They have shown extreme restraint and haven't been firing a bullet since 40, 50 years, right? So that shows that China has no intention at all to invade Taiwan. There's only two circumstances of which it would, and that is if Taiwan decides to separate itself from its motherland, the mainland of China, the People's Republic of China, or if there are foreign forces interfering and pushing for independence. And this is very interesting, and this is something that people should really think about, because what is the West actually trying to do? So then they continue the chief executive of Taiwan province, Chen Yi, sends a memorandum to the Japanese Governor General of Taiwan, stating that as the chief executive of Taiwan province of the Republic of China, you see how they say executive of Taiwan province of the Republic of China. That means that Taiwan is a province of China at that time of the Republic of China, who was at that time in 1945 the ruler in China. I restore all legal territory, people, administration, political, economic, and cultural facilities and assets of Taiwan, including the Penghu Islands, right? Now, then we have 1949. The Republic of China government relocates to Taiwan, followed by 1.2 million people from China. So they relocate from the mainland to Taiwan. Why do they do that? Because they lost the Civil War. And that is why they went there. October 25 sees the Battle of Kuning Tao on Kinmen, in which the Republic of China armed forces defeat the CCP on the northwestern coast of the island. Martial law is declared in Taiwan and continues to be enforced until 1987, talking about tyranny and dictatorship. And here it also shows, on October 25, they took the island of Kinmen by force. It was not the People's Republic of China.
Well, that is kind of aggressive, isn't it? Exactly something that they are accusing China of doing. Kinmen Island is really, really close to the mainland. I believe it is like 20 kilometers or something. You can swim it, but still it is untouched. While if the People's Republic of China wanted to take it, it's just within 5 minutes. There's no doubt about it. It's very small. So it also shows the restraint and the sincerity of the People's Republic of China wanting to have a peaceful resolution. And it also shows the aggressiveness of the Republic of China back in those days. Nowadays, they are just not strong enough. So you could also make a case that they are buying those weapons to strengthen themselves, because that was the actual plan. Stay on Taiwan under the protection of the United States of America, regain the strength, and then start taking back the mainland again. That was the original goal of the Republic of China when it relocated to the Chinese province Taiwan.
Then we have here 1971. On October 25, the United Nations General Assembly passes United Nations Resolution 2758, recognizing the People's Republic of China as the only legitimate representative of China to the global body. The Republic of China withdraws from the United Nations. So what have we learned now? That they lost their de jure. It went to China. Or not to China, but to the People's Republic of China. Sometimes I also get confused. But this shows clearly the history, which is agreed upon not only by the People's Republic of China, but also, as we have seen, by the government of Taiwan of right now, today, and also, as we have read earlier, by the United States itself. Now let's see what the American Institute in Taiwan has to say about it. Again, this is all sources from Taiwan. And here they say, where I highlighted it, we do not support Taiwan independence. They would not say that if Taiwan was an independent country, right? And it is all in line what we have discovered before that, right? Now, also, since you did not believe me that Taiwan itself calls itself China, I think you believe it by now, but we have here the Constitution of the Republic of China, Taiwan. And this is all from Taiwan itself. And I have highlighted a couple of things the number of delegates to be elected from Tibet shall be prescribed by law. Now, why would they be talking about Tibet? Well, because they consider Tibet also a part of China. Now you also, before you thought that Tibet was a different country, now you also see they also don't agree with it. They also say Tibet is a part of China. Why else would you have their delegates in your government, right? Or at least that is what they want. Now here they say, point 5, the number of delegates to be elected by Chinese citizens residing abroad shall be prescribed by law. So this is very interesting. The number of delegates to be elected by Chinese citizens residing abroad shall be prescribed by law. Why is it interesting? If they were not Chinese, why would they care about their Chinese citizens residing abroad? It doesn't make any sense, does it? So again, it looks very much that they are China, doesn't it? And this is not to bash you. I honestly want to give you the true information because obviously you have been influenced by anti-China propaganda, which gave you the assumptions that you are having, which are extremely wrong. Now, Article 64. Those to be elected from Mongolian leagues and banners, those to be elected from Tibet, those to be elected by various racial groups in frontier regions, those to be elected by Chinese citizens residing abroad, and those to be elected by occupational groups. Well, that's very interesting that they are also mentioning Mongolian leagues, because according to them, as also the People's Republic of China, a part of it also is China. And again, Tibet is mentioned. So you understand that now that they are really China, it is according to themselves, right? It is not according to me. It is not an assumption. It is literally what they are telling you themselves. And here, Article 91, the Control Yuan shall be composed of members who shall be elected by provincial, municipal councils, the local councils of Mongolia and Tibet, and the Chinese citizens residing abroad. Article 143 is very important. All land within the territory of the Republic of China shall belong to the whole body of citizens. Now, that is very interesting because they consider the entire China as theirs and even more, because they are claiming way more territory than the People's Republic of China does. But if they are doing that and they are saying here, all land within the territory of the Republic of China shall belong to the whole body of citizens, then that means that also includes the 1.4 billion people living in the People's Republic of China. That means that if the people in the mainland China, the People's Republic of China, will now say that Taiwan is a part of China and it should return and reunify back again with the mainland China, this government actually should listen according to their own Article 143. As they state, all land within the territory of the Republic of China shall belong to the whole body of citizens. So they should not be occupying Taiwan against the will of the people. Article 148, very interesting. Within the territory of the Republic of China, all goods shall be permitted to move freely from place to place. Right? Now, this is very interesting because it says here, TSMC stops AI chip exports to China following US directive. That goes against Article 148 in their own constitution. Since they consider mainland China as a part of them, this should never be happening. Do we see the contradiction here?
In other words, they are undermining the economy of what they consider their own land and people, trying to destroy it on behest of a foreign nation, going against the will of what they also consider their own people, trying to destroy the livelihoods of those same Chinese people as they consider also theirs on behest of a foreign nation. I will call that very, very aggressive and tyrannical towards your own people. But somehow, the People's Republic of China is the one who is being aggressive.
Now, Article 171 also says, coming back on that article, laws that are in conflict with the Constitution shall be null and void. So what TSMC is doing is actually going against their own Constitution. It's kind of funny, isn't it? Now, here this is funny when you go to Wikipedia, and there we find political status of Taiwan. And then it says the Republic of China Constitution still claims both mainland China and Taiwan as its territory. Just to reiterate what I before said and to prove you that it is not just my gibberish, right? So we have successfully showed that Taiwan is a part of China. So whatever you want to say about all these kind of things have no legal basis, my friend. Why are they ruled by a pro-American government? Well, because corruption. That's a main issue. It is not because they want to be divided. In fact, most people just want to keep the status quo, as you can see on this graph. Many want to decide later whether they want to reunify or not, and there's a very, very small percentage, just as small as the ones that want directly reunification as the ones that want direct independence. This is from Taiwan itself, not from Western media propaganda. I hope you can respect that. Going back to your comment where you say why Taiwan is ruled by a pro-American government, and if it called China, now why isn't it a part of China? We have successfully established that it is a part of China, acknowledged by all parties. Cannot be more clear, right? And then you say, and why they arming themselves with Western weapons for defense against a possible invasion? Now that's very interesting. Who says that they are buying weapons to defend themselves against a possible invasion? There is no evidence of a possible invasion as long as they do not declare independence, or when outside forces are mingling in and interfering in those matters and pushing Taiwan for independence. So if you do not want to have a military invasion, then all the West should stop interfering in those internal affairs of China, which they also agree upon that those are internal affairs of China. That is something that then they should respect, because if they do not, then that would be a breach of their sovereignty.
And look at this. The first batch of long-range 300-kilometer range missile systems has arrived in Taiwan just last month. The first batch, that is more than one. 300-kilometer range missiles. That is not for defense, that is for offense, mainly targeting China. Because what else will they be targeting with a 300-kilometer range missile?
It's quite simple, isn't it? Now, going back to your arms sales, this is the U.S. People's Republic of China Joint Communique 1982. And this is point 6 and 7. And I want you to listen very, very closely. Having in mind the foregoing statements of both sides, the United States government states that it does not seek to carry out a long-term policy of arms sales to Taiwan. That its arms sales to Taiwan will not exceed either in qualitative or in quantitative terms. The level of those supplied in recent years since the establishment of diplomatic relations between the United States and China, and that it intends gradually to reduce its sales to arms to Taiwan, leading over a period of time to a final resolution. In so stating, the United States acknowledges China's consistent position regarding the tariff settlements of this issue. Now, it is clearly that the United States is breaking its own agreement that it signed with the People's Republic of China. You should be wondering why they are doing that. Why are they making an agreement and continuously and repeatedly are breaking this agreement? Also understanding very well that what they are doing could very possibly end up in a war. In other words, what you should be wondering is, why is the United States trying so hard to push Taiwan into a hot war again with the mainland China? That is really the real question, what you should be asking, and not why Taiwan is buying it, but why the United States is not holding itself to their agreement. Because it is obvious that the United States agrees that Taiwan is a part of China. So, in order to respect the sovereignty of the People's Republic of China and to honor the agreement that they wrote down themselves and signed off on, they should not be selling weapons anymore to the Republic of China, Taiwan, because this is against their own agreement, as it states that they would sell less and also qualitative will not exceed. So all these agreements have been broken. That is also why the People's Republic of China is now starting to sanction all these military complex organizations and companies and people. And rightfully so. Now you understand when they are doing that they are fully in their right to do so, because the United States breaks its agreement time after time. Now, it's also very important to understand that all other agreements made with China are all based on these three Shanghai Communique. And that also means that whatever China now decides, if they would say, all of a sudden we confiscate all the McDonald's, all the American businesses, and we freeze all their assets and we take their money, it is totally in their right because of this breach in the agreement that the United States has with the People's Republic of China. It is very important to understand, especially also for Americans, because China at this moment can just say Americans are not welcome anymore, and it's totally in their right. Do we see how bad this situation actually has become due to the nature of the United States government, which is continuously breaking agreements with whoever they make one? I hope this was a learnful experience for you, and that you really learned something from this, and understand that it isn't always what you think. And it is very important, if you live in the West, or you live in a place where Western media has overtaken your own media, which is in most of the world, you should not assume things. You should research them yourself and go to the official channels to look what is really going on, and go back, way back, to see how the history is. That is what you should have done instead of arguing with me. There is no threat of invasion because China cannot invade. It is, as we've seen, a part of China. And as you definitely also would understand, you cannot invade your own country. Whatever the People's Republic of China decides on the matter of their province, Taiwan, it is up to them. It is none of anybody else's business, as it is clearly also according to the government of Taiwan, a province of China. There is no doubt about it. Everybody agrees on that. There's only 12 countries in the world that do not recognize it, so probably your country also recognizes the People's Republic of China as the sole and legal owner of whole of China, including Taiwan. And again, you should start to wonder why the media is trying to convince you that it is otherwise. We have seen it in many other different cases that they were trying to convince people of things that were not true because they wanted those nations to be in war. And this is the final part of my video. Now you should start to think, why do you want to have a war with China? Because in a case of a war with China, your shops will look like this, and it will only end nuclear, because the United States cannot win a conventional war against China at this point in time. Just think about it. That is my message. I think the people should start to learn the truth instead of trusting their assumptions. Assumptions are assumptions. Assumptions are not, by definition, the truth. And that is why it is very important, when you have assumptions, not to convince yourself that that is the truth. Until the time that you have done your due diligence research, you should take assumptions as assumptions and not as your truth. So your mind will be open to the truth. And that is also so you can learn and feed your beautiful brain with all these beautiful facts and truths, unless you want to live in a lie. I hope you enjoyed my video that I made specially for you, and also for all the others that thought something. I mean, it is what it is. You cannot change the facts. As we have discovered here, all parties agree on that Taiwan is a part of China. There's no doubt about it. What we should be thinking about now is how can we make the two sides reunify peacefully. And one of the things that we could do is hold the United States responsible for breaking its own agreement. We should stand up and say, this isn't good. We have seen what it leads to when we are looking at Ukraine now. Do we also want that for the people in Taiwan? If you have a heart, then you would say no. So the best thing is that we would be fighting for Taiwan reunification. The reason why I say that is not because I am pro People's Republic of China or whatever. I don't even live there. It is for the simple reason. One, the People's Republic is not going to let it go. So one way or the other, Taiwan will be reunified. The question is how? If it was solely up to the People's Republic of China, then it would be in a peaceful manner. But we have clearly witnessed how the West is trying to provoke a war between the two sides. Therefore, we as the people should stand up in order to save the people from misery. Why do I say that they must reunify? Is if the Chinese people in Taiwan want to keep their life like it is right now, then it is in their best interest to reunify. And the reason for that is very simple. Because if they would reunify now, they can have the one country, two systems, just like Hong Kong has, right? Then they will have the same life like they are having right now. If they don't and want to seek independence, or if the United States is pushing it too far, then it will become a military issue, and that one country and two systems will be off the chart, and it will be just as the People's Republic of China, and they have to change their way of life as it is today. Therefore, I would say that it is way more sensible for the rest of the world to fight for the people of Taiwan if you want to have them maintain their way of life as they have it now. And the only way you can do it successfully is by fighting for a peaceful reunification and opposing this US breach of the agreements of the three Shanghai Communiques. And they should cease the sales of weapons to them immediately. I hope this was helpful, and I honestly hope that you have learned a lot. All these things that you say don't really matter when we have these facts right here, right? You do agree with me, right? Your comment doesn't hold any legal basis on why Taiwan should be a separate country, while they don't even acknowledge themselves as a separate country. Even when you say why it is ruled by a pro-American government, well, that's because that government, that party, has been voted in. And how do you get people to vote? Due to propaganda. It's that simple. It happens in the West. It happens in all these liberal democracies. Misinform your people, which they are doing. They are changing the history books in school to influence the minds of the children. They are censoring opposing voices on media, and also sometimes by force. It is not a whole free society as if you really believe. It is definitely not. Try to be on another side and see how they will treat you. Not all the people, because it is quite mixed, but the government. Just try it. Anyway, I hope this was helpful to you. Again, that was actually it. I hope the people will also go and follow my YouTube channel if you're watching this on TikTok. And that was it. I have nothing more to say anymore. Your favorite Half Chinese, please like, share, and if you have not yet, then follow.